Was standing in my kitchen when I got home. Not at the door, not in the living room. In my kitchen, with her coat still on, going through my mail on the counter like she was sorting her own. I set my keys down slowly. She didn't look up. "You got a notice from the HOA," she said. "Your grass is too long again." It was 6:47 in the evening. I had just picked up my daughter from after-school care, driven 40 minutes through traffic, and walked into my own house to find my mother-in-law, Elaine, reading my correspondence at my kitchen island. Her car wasn't even in the driveway. She'd parked in the street so I wouldn't see it. "My name is Amber Calloway. I've been married to Derek for 4 years. And for 4 years, his mother has had a key to our house in Naperville, Illinois, that she uses the way most people use their own front door. Casually, automatically, like the lock was just a formality." That evening I smiled, took the HOA notice from her hand, and said I'd take care of it. She stayed for dinner without being asked. She reorganized my spice rack while I was bathing our daughter, Lily. When I came downstairs, everything was alphabetized. Rosemary next to sage next to thyme. Very neat, very intentional, and completely not something I'd asked anyone to do. Derek came home at 8. He kissed me, kissed his mother, and said, "Mom, you staying over?" She patted his cheek. "Just heading out." After she left, I stood at the spice rack for a long time. It hadn't always been like this. When Derek and I first got married, Elaine was the kind of mother-in-law people warned you might happen, but you didn't actually believe. She helped us move into the house. She brought a casserole every Sunday. She offered to babysit Lily so we could have date nights. She was warm and available, and I thought we were lucky. The key came 6 months after we moved in. Derek handed it over during a Sunday dinner, casual as passing the salt. His mom had mentioned she'd feel better knowing she could get in if there was ever an emergency. Lily was 9 months old. I understood the logic. I handed the spare over myself. I should have known something had shifted the afternoon I came home early from a client meeting and found Elaine folding laundry in our bedroom. Not the laundry room. Our bedroom. She'd opened the hamper, sorted everything, and was folding Derek's shirts on our bed. She looked up and smiled. "I didn't want you to come home to a mess." I thanked her. I don't know why I thanked her. I think because I didn't yet have language for what the feeling in my chest was. After that, the visits became harder to track because they stopped looking like visits. They looked like help. The dishwasher would be unloaded when I hadn't unloaded it. A sticky note on the fridge, "Picked up Lily early so you could have more time." Text to Derek at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, "Just checked in. The front gutter is looking loose. You should call someone." She wasn't in our house when those things happened. She was in our life. There's a difference, and it took me 2 years to name it. The turning point, the one I come back to, was a Saturday in October. Derek was out of town for a conference. Lily and I had spent the morning at the farmer's market, and I was in a genuinely good mood, which had been harder to come by lately. We came home. Lily fell asleep in the car. I carried her inside, and when I walked into the living room, Elaine was sitting on my couch with a cup of coffee she'd made from my coffee maker, watching something on my TV. "Oh, good. You're back," she said. "I wanted to talk to you about something." I put Lily down. I sat across from her, and she told me, very gently, that she'd been thinking about whether Lily might benefit from a more structured schedule. She'd noticed that Lily seemed tired a lot, a little clingy. She'd done some reading. She said it in the way she said most things, soft and rounded at the edges, concern wrapped so carefully around the critique that you had to dig to find it. I told her I appreciated her input. She left an hour later. I sat in the same spot on the couch and stared at the wall. That night Derek called from his hotel, and I tried to explain what had happened, and he said, "She's just worried about Lily. You know how she is. You know how she is. That was ours." That was the sentence I lived inside for the first 3 years of our marriage. She escalated slowly, the way something that's been simmering will eventually boil. You don't notice the temperature rising until your hand is already burned. She started texting Derek photos. Nothing dramatic, nothing aggressive, just small things. A picture of Lily in the same outfit 2 days in a row. A photo of the kitchen counter with crumbs on it. One message that said, "Lily told me she had cereal for dinner last night. Just wanted to make sure everything's okay at home." Derek forwarded it to me asking what happened. What happened was I'd had a brutal deadline. Lily had asked for cereal. I gave her cereal. She's 4. She loves cereal. It wasn't a crisis. But after Derek forwarded that message, something changed in our conversations. He started asking questions like he was cross-referencing. He'd come home and ask how Lily's day was in a way that felt like an audit. Once he said unprompted, "My mom thinks you might be overwhelmed. Are you doing okay?" And when I said I was fine, he nodded slowly in a way that meant he wasn't sure he believed me. I started paying attention differently after that. I noticed that when Elaine and Derek talked on the phone, he'd go quiet in a particular way. A listening way, not a talking way. I noticed that when she came over and I wasn't in the room, those conversations stopped when I walked back in. I noticed that once, when I came in from the back porch, Derek closed his laptop quickly and said nothing, just work stuff before I'd even asked. I didn't say anything. I kept my face even and I kept watching. The moment I understood the full shape of what she was doing happened on a Tuesday afternoon in February. I came home from picking up Lily to find an envelope on the counter. Not unusual, the mail slot was right there. But this envelope had been opened, neatly, with a letter opener, and then closed again with a small piece of tape at the fold. It was addressed to me. It was from my Abjin, a routine follow-up letter after my annual appointment. Elaine had been by that afternoon. I knew because the dishwasher was running and I hadn't started it. She had opened my mail, read something addressed to me from my doctor, and taped it back shut. I stood at the counter for a long time. Then I put the envelope in my bag, and I didn't say a word. That night after Lily was in bed, I sat at the kitchen table and I thought about every visit, every text, every note, every photograph. And I understood. She wasn't worried about Lily's schedule or the crumbs on the counter. She was building a record, a careful, curated, sustained record of everything she could interpret as my inadequacy, and she'd been sharing it with my husband, one soft, concerned observation at a time, for years. She was trying to make him question me, slowly, carefully, just enough that the doubt would already be there if she ever needed to use it. And then I thought, what exactly might she need to use it for? I started looking more carefully, and 3 weeks later, going through the shared family email account we'd set up to manage Lily's school things, I found a forwarded email chain that Derek didn't know I could see. It was between Elaine and her sister. The subject line was "Talking to Gary," Gary being her brother-in-law who happened to be a family law attorney in the Chicago suburbs. She hadn't done anything yet, no official consultation, no formal action. But the chain showed her laying the groundwork, asking questions, talking about patterns, using phrases like environment of concern and documentation I've been keeping. I closed my laptop very quietly. I made myself a cup of tea, and I decided that I was done letting this happen to me. The next morning I called a home security company. I scheduled a consultation for the following Thursday when Derek was at work and Lily was at preschool. I did not tell Elaine, I did not tell Derek. I ordered a smart lock system for the front door, the back door, and the garage entry. I also ordered 2 small cameras for the entryway and the living room, both clearly visible, both pointed at the main areas of the house. Then I started my own documentation. Every visit, every text, every observation shared, every time my mail was disturbed, I wrote it in a notes app on my phone with timestamps. I forwarded myself the texts Elaine sent Derek about the house, the ones he'd shown me, and the ones I'd seen in our shared account. I scheduled Lily's next pediatric well visit, and at the appointment I asked her doctor detailed questions in writing about her development, her sleep, her social-emotional health. The doctor noted everything in the chart. Lily was thriving. She was in the 70th percentile for height, fully on track developmentally, and according to her doctor, one of the more confident 4-year-olds she'd seen that season. I printed the visit summary and put it in a folder. A week after the system was installed, I called Elaine. I used my softest voice, the one that matched hers. "I'd love for you to come by Thursday morning," I said. "I'd been thinking about what you said, about Lily's schedule. I think you might have a point and I want to talk through it, just the 2 of us." There was a pause. Then warmth flooded back into her voice. "Of course, sweetheart. What time? 10 o'clock? I'll be there." She was there at 9:52. I watched the camera on my phone from the kitchen. I watched her walk up the front path and stop at the door. I watched her take her key out of her purse. I watched the smart lock display the access denied message, one small red blink on the keypad. She rang the doorbell 11 seconds later. I opened the door smiling. I updated the system last week, I said. New smart lock, new codes. You know how it is with all the package thefts in the neighborhood lately? I stepped back so she could come in. She stepped inside and I watched her eyes move through the house. She clapped the camera in the entryway, then the one angled toward the living room. Just a flicker, a half second, and then she was smiling again. It's so clean in here, she said. Thank you. Can I get you coffee? We sat at the kitchen table. I'd made her the kind she liked, half-calf with a splash of oat milk, and she wrapped her hands around the mug and looked at me with that expression I'd learned to read, the one that meant she was deciding which version of the conversation to have. I appreciate you reaching out, she said. I know things have been tense. They have, I agreed. I've been trying to understand why. She tilted her head. I think you've been under a lot of pressure. And sometimes when we're struggling, it's hard to see it ourselves. What makes you think I've been struggling? I just observe things, as a grandmother, as someone who loves this family. What kinds of things? A small pause. Well, little things. Lily mentioned cereal for dinner a few times. I've noticed the house can get a bit chaotic sometimes. I just worry about the environment. I finished. She looked at me. I've actually been doing a little documenting of my own, I said, and I slid the folder across the table. She opened it. The first page was Lily's pediatric visit summary, then growth charts, then vaccination records, then a letter I'd asked Lily's preschool teacher to write, confirming that Lily arrived on time every day, clean, fed, socially engaged, and consistently showed indicators of a secure home attachment. After that, a written statement from our next-door neighbor, Janet, a retired school principal who'd watched Lily twice when I had late client calls, describing our home as warm, organized, and loving. Elaine set it down carefully. That's Lily's health and school record, I said. Completely up to date. The teacher wrote that letter last week, Janet offered. I'm glad she's doing well, Elaine said. Me too. I picked up my phone. I also wanted to show you something since we're talking about documentation. I tapped the screen and turned it to face her. The living room TV came on behind her and she turned around. The footage was clear. Elaine walking in through the front door without knocking. Elaine at the kitchen counter opening a piece of mail with a letter opener she'd apparently brought herself, reading it, folding it back, taping it shut. Elaine in the living room going through a stack of bills I'd left on the side table. Elaine in the entryway photographing the interior of our coat closet on her phone. 4 separate visits, time-stamped, in sequence. She turned back around. Her coffee mug was still in her hands. Her face had changed. I have a camera, I said, because you come into my home without my permission, and I needed to know what was happening here when I wasn't here. I was helping. You opened my mail, I said. Not loudly, just clearly. That's a federal offense. Opening someone else's mail without authorization is a crime under 18 U.S.C. 1702. I looked it up. I also spoke with someone in a legal consultation briefly, just to understand my options. She set the mug down. I also found the emails, I said. The chain with your sister. About Gary. The silence in the kitchen was very complete. I'm not going to pretend I don't know what you've been building, I said. I've watched you build it week by week, visit by visit, every text to Derek about the crumbs in the cereal and Lily being tired. I know what that record was for. And I want you to know that I have my own record now, and mine has the advantage of being true. Derek walked in at that moment. I had asked him to come home at 10:30. He'd been at a coffee shop 4 blocks away waiting for my text. He came through the door, looked at me, looked at his mother, looked at the TV, still showing a frozen frame of her reading my mail at my counter. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Mom, he said finally. She rallied fast. She was good at rallying. Derek, I was trying to protect Lily. A grandmother has the right to be concerned by going through Amber's mail. I was. That's on camera, Mom. I can see it. I have documentation of my own concerns, which you were planning to take to Uncle Gary, I said, and I slid one last thing across the table. I had printed the email chain myself, the relevant portions, and highlighted the date of the first message, 14 months ago. She had been working on this for 14 months. Derek sat down slowly. He read it. I watched his face move through something. I had seen Derek process difficult things before. He went quiet, and then very still, and I could see the moment when the shape of the last 2 years reordered itself in his mind. All the times he'd come home asking careful questions. All the late-night phone calls where he went to another room. All the "you know how she is." He set the papers down and looked at his mother. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't have to say anything. He already knew. "You were going to pursue custody," he said, "not a question." I was concerned. Of my daughter. Our daughter. He shook his head. "Mom, this isn't something I can just wave off. If you could only see how overwhelmed she is sometimes. She's not overwhelmed. She's working and raising our kid and running this house, and I have not been paying enough attention." He said the last part quietly, more to himself than to either of us. The rest of it was not dramatic. There was no screaming, no throwing things. Elaine cried briefly, the kind of crying that felt like it was angling for a response, and when neither of us moved toward her, she stopped. She tried one more time to redirect, something about how she'd only ever wanted what was best for the family. Derek said he believed she believed that. Then he asked her for her house key. She placed it on the table without speaking. "You are welcome in this house," I said, "when we invite you. I will never stop you from seeing Lily, but you will call first. You will not enter without one of us present. And anything you have to say about our daughter, you say to us directly, not to lawyers, not to your sister, not in emails you assume I can't see." She picked up her purse. She didn't look at me when she left. Derek sat at the table after she was gone. The camera footage had stopped running. The folder of documents was still open. Lily's growth charts were right there on top, her little height measurements going steadily upward, month after month, exactly the way they should. He said, "I'm sorry I didn't see it." I sat down across from him. "I know you didn't want to. That's not an excuse." "No," I said, "it's not." We sat there for a while. Not in a bad way. Just in a real way, the kind of quiet that happens when something has finally been named, and the naming has cost something. 3 weeks later, Derek changed the garage code. He told his mother via text politely, and included a reminder that future visits needed to be scheduled in advance. She responded 2 days later. 4 sentences. She said she understood. She asked if she could take Lily to the Children's Museum the following Saturday. Derek checked with me. I said yes. When she picked Lily up that morning, she stood on the porch and waited for me to bring Lily to her. She didn't reach for the door handle. She didn't look past me into the house. She said, "Thank you, Amber." It wasn't an apology, but it was the first sentence she'd ever said to me that didn't have another sentence hiding inside it. I buckled Lily into her car seat and I watched them drive away, and then I went back inside and stood in my hallway, which was exactly the way I'd left it. And I thought about how strange it is, the feeling of a house that belongs to you. Not quieter than before, not cleaner, just finally completely mine. The thing I keep coming back to is the spice rack. Not the cameras, not the email chain, not the moment I slid that folder across the table, the spice rack. Because that was the first night I stood in my own kitchen and felt like a guest in it, and I let it pass. I put the rosemary back next to the sage, and I told myself it wasn't worth the conflict. I think about how many times I did that, how many small things I smoothed over because the alternative felt harder. And I understand now that every time I did, I was making a choice, not the one I thought I was making, which was keeping the peace, but a different one entirely. I was telling myself that my discomfort mattered less than someone else's comfort. I was practicing, without realizing it, a kind of slow surrender. What Elaine was doing had a logic to it. She wasn't cruel in the way people imagine cruelty. She was patient. She built her case the way you'd build anything meant to last, carefully, over time, one small piece at a time. And what stopped her wasn't an explosion or a confrontation or a moment of dramatic revelation. What stopped her was that I finally decided to be just as deliberate as she was. I stopped reacting and started thinking. I stopped absorbing and started documenting. I matched her patience with my own. That's the part I didn't expect to be true. That the answer wasn't louder, it was clearer. There's something I've learned about doing the right thing that nobody really tells you. It doesn't always feel righteous in the moment. The morning I called that security company, I felt sick to my stomach. I second-guessed myself the entire drive to pick up Lily. I wondered if I was overreacting, if I was the difficult one, if Elaine's version of events was somehow more accurate than my own lived experience inside my own house. That doubt is real and it's not weakness. It's just what honesty feels like when you've spent a long time being told your perceptions aren't trustworthy. But I kept going anyway. I kept going because Lily deserved a mother who hadn't quietly given up. I kept going because Derek deserved the truth more than he deserved to be protected from it. And I kept going because somewhere underneath all the self-doubt, I knew what I had seen with my own eyes, and I had a responsibility to that knowledge. The key Elaine placed on my kitchen table that morning. I still think about that. She didn't throw it. She didn't argue. She set it down like she already knew on some level that the thing she'd built couldn't hold when someone looked directly at it. That's usually how it goes. The things that depend on not being examined don't survive the examination. I'm not the same person who thanked her for reorganizing my spice rack. I don't think I could go back to being that person now even if I wanted to. What I learned about paying attention, about trusting what I know, about doing the hard thing in the quiet, ordinary way rather than the dramatic one. I carry all of that with me. Not as a wound, just as a fact about who I am now. The house is mine. It was always mine. I just had to be willing to act like it.